Ready for a deep dive? We're going to be talking about the ripple effects of inventions. They don't just change like our gadgets and stuff, but really can rewire societies, even our values.
Yeah, it's like this chain reaction, isn't it? We often just think about, the immediate impact, like, oh, the light bulb, it lights up our homes. But what's really cool is like tracing how those impacts, those ripples, spread out, sometimes over like centuries.
It really is amazing, like something so simple can have a huge impact. For example, the plow. I mean, who would think that a farming tool could actually lead to big societal changes? But our sources say it actually was a big deal in the rise of feudalism in Europe.
Yeah, no, that's true. The heavy plow, especially the moldboard plow, totally changed things in Northern Europe. The soil there was fertile but really wet, you know. And with this plow, boom, it was super productive. And here's the thing, you needed like a whole team of oxen or horses to use it.
So it's not just about growing more crops, right? It's also about who's got the resources to use this new technology.
You got it. Not everyone could just like get a bunch of animals, so people started farming together, pooling their resources, and that led to villages, shared ownership, and eventually, a social hierarchy. The people who had the land and the tools, they had the power.
So the plow, it's like it accidentally created this whole system of lords and serfs, unintended consequences much.
Exactly. And it wasn't just land. It even impacted gender roles. There's archaeological stuff that shows that as the plow became more common, women's status actually went down.
Wow, that's not something you hear every day. A good reminder that progress doesn't always help everyone equally. Speaking of which, let's jump from those European fields to the world of music.
Whoa, okay, big change.
Hmm.
How are those two connected?
Well, think about it. The plow changed society way back when. Fast forward, and you've got the gramophone in the late 1800s. It wasn't just a new way to listen to music, it created the superstar and that whole thing about some people having way more money and influence. We're still dealing with that today.
Oh, I see what you mean. We don't always make those connections. Like the gramophone seems kind of old-fashioned now, but it really had this huge impact.
It's all about reaching more people. Before, a musician was limited, right? The biggest thing was to fill a concert hall.
Right, like Elizabeth Billington, she was an opera singer back in the early 1800s. She was a huge deal. People loved her, even had an opera house lit up when she got over an illness.
Basically, the Beyoncé of her time. But I'm guessing she wasn't making Beyoncé money.
Not even close. I mean, she was rolling in it for back then, but nothing compared to like Elton John today, not even adjusted for inflation or anything.
So how do we get from candles at the opera to, like, sold-out stadiums and billion-dollar streaming deals?
That's where your gramophone comes in, and then radio, TV, they took music global. The very best can reach so many people. Economists even have a name for it, the superstar effect. It's like the winner takes it all, and the rewards get bigger and bigger for those at the top.
And then, bam, the internet comes along and just explodes that effect, don't you think?
No doubt. Anyone with a phone can be a musician or whatever now, but let's be real. Very few people are going to hit it big.
It's crazy, right? Inventions can totally rewrite the rules, not just, like, change how we do things. It's like back in the Wild West with barbed wire, of all things.
Barbed wire, huh? Doesn't seem like much, but you're onto something. It totally changed the game out west.
Our sources talk about how before barbed wire, the West was this huge open range, cattle everywhere, nobody really owning land. Then, boom, this simple invention and everything shifts.
It's like someone drew lines on a map, but with fences. Ranchers could finally say, this is mine, and it used to be everyone's. So naturally you get conflict, even violence, because people are fighting over who gets what.
So barbed wire, it wasn't just about fences, it was about power. Hence the whole fence wars thing we've read about.
You got it. Nothing about barbed wire is good or bad on its own, but it changed the rules, and some folks came out on top while others, not so much. And it's funny, we're seeing that happen again, but online this time.
Yeah, it's like the internet is the new Wild West with its own kind of barbed wire. I'm thinking Uber, Airbnb, those sorts of things. Connecting people, sure, but not without some bumps along the way.
It's really interesting how these platforms are drawing those lines, not with actual fences, but with algorithms and all those terms of service nobody reads. It's a whole new economy, the gig economy, and nobody's really sure who's the boss anymore.
And just like those range wars back in the day, now we're arguing about worker rights, regulations, who's winning in this new system, makes you think, what'll be the lasting impact of all this digital stuff?
The million-dollar question, right? It just shows with invention, there's always a trade-off. But hey, it's not always so dramatic. Some inventions, they fly under the radar, but their impact is huge.
The unsung heroes of progress, right? Like, our sources talk about Google's search algorithm, shipping containers, even passports, things we don't think about much.
We totally take them for granted.
Oh, boy.
But can you imagine no Google to find stuff? Or shipping things being super expensive? And passports, that little book lets you cross borders, be a global citizen. Kind of a big deal.
It's easy to forget how important passports are. Back in the day, traveling to another country, that was a huge ordeal, only for the rich and lucky, basically.
Passports, they made it a system, linked your identity to a country. But that also means some people got to move freely and others didn't. Especially after World War I, things got a lot stricter.
Yeah, the sources say governments were worried about security, so they went all in on passports. It's wild how something invented for one reason ends up meaning such different things over time.
Makes you wonder, with all the tech we have now, and countries worried about security again, will passports become digital? Or will new inventions make it even harder to travel for some?
Lots to unpack there, but before we go too far down that rabbit hole, what about shipping containers? Not exactly exciting, but they change the world.
Oh, absolutely. Before those things, loading and unloading cargo, a nightmare. Expensive, slow, the works. Then, boom, standardized shipping containers in the mid-20th century, and global trade just explodes. Faster, cheaper, the whole deal.
A simple box, and the whole world economy shifts. Just goes to show what you were saying, inventions have these ripple effects, good and bad. Cheaper stuff, yeah. But also, some people lost jobs, and now we've got these massive global supply chains which have their own problems.
It's like we're always playing catch-up, right? Invent something to fix one problem, and 10 more pop up. Which, I guess, brings us to the future.
So we've got AI, right? Like, that's the big one everyone's talking about, changing how we do, well, everything, maybe. But then, concrete. Kind of surprised to see that in our sources next to all this high-tech stuff.
Yeah, it's funny how the everyday just fades into the background. We think, oh, concrete is for buildings, who cares?
Yeah.
But it's the base of our entire world, practically. Cities, roads, bridges, even art. It's everywhere. You know, it's the second most used thing on Earth. After water.
No way, seriously. I never would have guessed.
Right. It's so common we just forget about it. And that's what makes it interesting, you know, from an invention point of view. Been around forever, thousands of years old, but it's still shaping how we live. And not just because it's, like, physically strong.
Our sources talk about the environmental impact. Like, making all this concrete, that's a lot of pollution, isn't it?
Huge carbon footprint, yeah. Which is why it's got to be part of the whole inventing sustainably conversation. We need concrete, but we got to make it cleaner. What if we could make it carbon neutral? Or even, like, it sucks carbon out of the air.
Now you're talking. That would be incredible. It makes you think it's not enough to just invent. Got to invent responsibly.
Exactly. And that brings us back to what this whole deep dive's been about, yeah? Inventions, big or small, they can be good or bad, depending.
Like the plow. More food, but also, you know, created that whole lord and serf system. Or the gramophone, music for everyone, but the superstars get all the rewards. Even barbed wire, just trying to keep your cows separate. And it sparks these huge conflicts.
The point is, we can't be scared of new stuff, but we got to be smart about it. Don't just ask, can we make this? Ask, should we? And how do we make sure it doesn't backfire?
It's like we've got choices, right? We're not just along for the ride. Every time we buy something, vote. Even just like think about what we want to invent ourselves that shapes where technology goes.
So next time you're out and about, take a look around. What are the inventions, the obvious ones, and the hidden ones? What did they change, for better or worse? And how can you make sure the future is full of inventions that help everyone?
Wow, that's a lot to think about. This has been an awesome journey. We've connected some dots, seen how things aren't always what they seem, and hopefully sparked some curiosity out there.
Don't forget, the next big thing could be anything. A gadget, a new idea, even a better way to make concrete, you never know. Just keep your mind open, be curious, and never stop asking questions.